Dawson Rider with you.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here. Welcome to my pseudo finale for this series of videos in which I go over the different eras. I say pseudo finale because I have one more video planned in this sort of same line that'll be happening later, but I'll talk about that at the end of the video. So this is me ranking all of the Saban Entertainment era seasons. As I always say at the beginning, this is not a definitive list. I did not run an algorithm, to be honest. I'm not even sure what an algorithm is. You know, if this isn't the right list, this is just my personal list. It's kind of weird making these because a lot of the time it ends up where there's seasons where I'm like, I know this season's objectively better, but I kind of like this one more. And there'd often be tiebreakers where it would be based off of either objective or personal. So it's mainly a personal list, but a couple times I had a hard time deciding, so I would just go with the one I thought was objectively better. But I don't know why I just went over my process. That was really boring, and I'm sorry about that. Let's get started. So coming in at the bottom of the list is MMPR Season 1. I mean, this obviously is the season that started it all, which is something that people always say, and I'm always kind of bothered when people like give, I mean, yeah, something that's first deserves the credit for starting it, but that doesn't mean it always gets to be above others just because it was first. It's like the YouTube commenters that say first. And this season honestly is kind of nothing. Like, against my better judgment, I do have a bit of nostalgia for it because it was the season I started with. I remember watching it and buying the toys and wearing out the VHS tapes and all that. But just revisiting it, it's one of the hardest to rewatch because it's so bad. Like, there's basically three main plots. The show starts, the Green Ranger, I guess you can count that as two if you count when he starts and stops, and then Doomsday. But then the rest is all useless filler. You could like recommend like 15 episodes and not have missed anything. It's really just a season of nothing, and it does not hold up very well. Next up is MMPR Season 2, which it was a little bit of an improvement. Actually, last time I rewatched it, I was kind of impressed, I guess you could say, at how much there was kind of going on, but a lot of that had to do with behind the scenes changes because we're introducing the White Ranger, we had to get rid of Zach, Trini, and Jason, which it's really funny watching that because at the same time I'm thinking, wow, this is really obvious, but also they kind of low-key did a good job, and I'm also disappointed that Kid Me was so easily fooled. But there's actually a lot more going on. I think that there was more plot stuff happening, little bits of improvement. I actually don't mind MMPR Season 2, I just think that there's better seasons above it. Coming up next is Turbo. Turbo is kind of a weird one because in my head I almost want to rank them like as 1A and 1B in terms of the season, because the first half is pretty poopy, to be honest. I mean, there's some parts I kind of like I appreciated them trying to do the detonator stuff as something different, but then it quickly got old. It was like a Team Rocket plot, and it wasn't until we got the second half with the new cast that I thought it was pretty solid. There were some iffy episodes at the beginning where we sort of got used to the status quo, but after that, they actually moved us in some pretty nice momentum stuff, the cool stuff with the Phantom Ranger, and it has one of my favorite finales, but it's such a mixed season. Like, it has some really strong points, but it's so mixed, which is why it's solo on my list, even though I don't really have an overwhelming hatred for it or anything like that. Coming up next is Lightspeed. This is kind of a weird one for me because I've never been the biggest fan, and I feel like as of recent years, because of certain people, rhymes with Pink Cara, it's become a very popular series, and I think it's a little bit overrated because of that. But I think it's a solid PR series. Like, I feel like every time I watch it, I'm of a different mind. Sometimes I'm like, ugh, I don't like this at all. Some of the characters are so annoying. How do I get through this? And other times I'm like, yeah, that was okay. And other times I'm like, well, actually, that's pretty good moments. So it's mixed for me, but I think it's a solid season. A lot of my dislike largely comes from the cast. Not that, like, I'm like, I hate the cast, I wish ill on them. Just, like, not, like, as people, but, like, as the characters. Like, I've never been a huge Carter fan. Chad's okay. Kelsey, I think, is the most annoying human being ever to exist. Dana's pretty okay. I really like Joel. Like, Joel the Sky Cowboy is the GOAT of that season. I think Ryan's story is cool, but it's very quickly wasted. It goes from, I was raised by demons and I hate my father, to, golly gee, Pop, sure hope I didn't make you mad. It's very mixed, but I think it's a solid season. It's just not one of my personal favorites, but I can see why people like it in certain regards. I think it had some strong villains, like Diabolico is probably one of my favorite Saban era villains, if I'm being honest. And to be honest, if I was ranking it, I would actually rank, like, Turbo first half, then Lightspeed, and then Turbo second half, if I could split them up like that. Next up is Zeo. Zeo's another weird one because it's hugely popular in the fandom, and in a way I have a very special place for it. I'm very fond of it, but it's mainly because of the excitement of how it came about. You know, especially if you were alive when MMPR came out, so not you, Josh. Here, MMPR was very much the status quo, you know, it was always the same suits. Yeah, we got new Zords, but so it was very exciting to get new suits and stuff like that, and the promos for it, you gotta see it, it's coming, the new toys, the whole, and the suits were so different too. And honestly, I thought the setup for it was really well done, and the beginning of it was really well done. And so inherently, I have a soft spot for it because I think it was a really cool place in PR history, and it's still, to a degree, an enjoyable season to revisit, but I feel like as a whole, it's honestly not that great. Like, it had a decent start, it had improved filler over some of MMPR in certain regards, but I think that it kind of was a reversion, in my opinion. I thought MMPR Season 3 was really strong compared to the other seasons where there was a lot of momentum going, and then I feel it kind of dialed it back between MMPR Season 2 and 3 in terms of being more filler, less going on, not to mention the absolute non-ending. So I think it's a little bit more of a messy season, even though I have nostalgia for it. Next up is Lost Galaxy, which is another weird one, and I wasn't sure whether I'd rank this or Zeo first or second, because Lost Galaxy is another mixed season for me. It's another one that's pretty popular amongst the fans, and it's kind of like Lightspeed. I can see why, but whenever I rewatch it, I see it as a very disjointed season, and I think a lot of that has to do with, like, some of the behind the scenes stuff. If you watch any of the panels, there's a bunch of different stories of plans and things they just never did that I think the season could have been crazy awesome, like more awesome if they had actually been able to do some of the plans. So for me, like, the sum of its parts isn't that great, but there's enough I like about it that makes me like it. Like, I love the pilot. For whatever reason, the beginning of Lost Galaxy is one of my favorite openers. I don't know why. I mean, I can explain it, but I mean, at the same time, I'm like, why do I still like that so much? But I do. I don't know. But I like the pilot. The stuff with the Magna Defender's pretty solid, and I love the arc that goes from the in-space team-up all the way through Corone being in there. I think was super cool. So I don't think it's as cohesive as a season as I would like, but it's got some really cool individual parts, and I also really respect the creative thinking that went into it and trying to expand on the lore and the style of In Space. Next up, this might be a little bit controversial putting this above Lost Galaxy, but is MMPR Season 3. Because MMPR in general is overrated, but like a lot of us, even if we're sick of MMPR, have a soft spot for it. And Season 3 for me is the soft spot of it, because I think it was the strongest. I think there was the most momentum going on. I also love its opener. I like Ninja Quest story actually a lot more than the movies for whatever reason. But it's mainly because it's like this huge event where the Zords get destroyed and stuff, and it goes into this new era. And then after a while, once Master Vile shows up, I'm a poet, I didn't even know I rhymed those words. Like, the Rangers' backs were always up against the wall, up until the point where they were sort of defeated when they turned them into kids. So I felt that there was a lot more plot going on, and it felt like the Rangers actually were being challenged actively. And to be honest, I forgot to mention this at the beginning of the video, but I personally always count Alien Rangers as part of it. I don't count it as a separate season, so I'm counting the Alien Rangers miniseries as part of this ranking. And I always enjoyed that. I thought it was a fun beat. For the Alien Rangers, I thought they were fun, interesting, quirky characters that I just enjoyed seeing that different take. And it was a little bit of a nice change of pace. And as I mentioned with the Zeo setup, the MMPR transition to Zeo was surprisingly well done. Like, when I revisit it, there was a ton of cool setup and foreshadowing. Like, I don't remember whose quest it was, but there was somebody's quest where there was a drawing of Zeo 5's helmet in the back. And there was like all kinds of little touches like that I thought the transition was done really well, which is why I really dig MMPR Season 3. Now getting into the top 3 is Wild Force. I think Wild Force is a pretty underrated season. I always liked it okay, but on my last revisit I really grew to appreciate how cool it is. It's got a really great score. It kept the plot going surprisingly well. Like, I was legitimately surprised how many episodes actually evolved the plot and kept it going. Like, even a filler episode, there'd always be something at the end which would get us into the next episode, and I really appreciated that. And it was a lot better than I remember. It had some really cool beats to it, and I really appreciate Master Org as a villain, because it was kind of similar to Rancic in the way we had these two humanized villains, but I like that it was the opposite of Time Force, and I'm really surprised that they had the power crystals to not redeem him, especially now in modern Toku, in all of them, PR, Sentai, Rider, they're always redeeming everybody, and I was surprised that they actually went through with making a villain, not a monster villain, but was once human, irredeemably evil, and it's I think a really underrated villain in an underrated season. Coming in at number 2 is Time Force. I actually had a hard time deciding whether my number 2 would be Time Force or number 2 be Time Force or Wild Force, because I actually think Wild Force is a little bit better at plot momentum after revisiting them, and there was a lot more filler in Time Force than I remember, a lot more boring spots. But overall, I think I'm just a little bit more fond of Time Force. I think it has a lot to do with the cast. It's one of those casts that I really just like their dynamic, and I think that brings out a lot of the likability, and I love a lot of the stuff they did with the original villain Rancic. So this is one where, and honestly, it might be controversial, but I think Wild Force is a little bit better at overall consistency of plot, but I'm just a little bit more fond of Time Force because of the character stuff. Not that I disliked Wild Force's cast, but I just like the cast of Time Force overall, both as individuals and how they interplay with each other. For me though, the number 1 is Power Rangers in Space. Kind of a generic answer, but I've said this many times, so I'm going to keep it brief, because In Space comes in at the top of a lot of my lists. But it really just represents everything I love about Power Rangers in general. It was this huge culmination of the Zordon era, and it represented the crazy mixed up world that Power Rangers lived in the best way, and really showed how much the series had evolved, paid off a lot of things, also gave us a lot of new things. It's just my favorite PR series in general, and I think it's just, like I said, a really good representative of what makes PR unique from the other Toku shows for me, and just why PR is unique for me in general amongst my interests. That is it for this list. As always, let me know what you guys think. What are your favorite Saban Entertainment seasons? Let me know in the comments. As I said, this is a pseudo finale to these series of videos I've been doing over months now because they kind of got delayed. But I am going to be doing, I'm not sure when this is going up, but as of this recording I'm saying, I'm going to be doing a video sometime I think in early December ranking all the Power Rangers seasons, since Beast Morphers will be done in most parts of the world by then. So that might take a while to work on because I'm probably going to have to revisit the list a couple times, but so that'll be kind of the finale of this line of videos just in time for the end of the year. But until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for all my videos. Till next time, Dawson Ryder, signing out.